Welcome along to the Make It Count podcast. My name is David.
My name's Matt.
And we are the Taylor Bros.
That is what we are.
Yeah, we're trying to make it count every week.
Indeed. So last week we were speaking about 3 months to live, better make a plan. David's 3-month planner, which is very helpful for that 90-day. It's a bit of a stretch goal, but it's within reach and it's within sight. And we spoke about before Warren Buffett's sort of advice for life, which is make a list of the top 25 things that you want to do in your life. The top 25 things, and then order that into priority, 1 down to 25, and then take the top 5 and say, this is my to-do list, or to-life list almost. And then you've got to title that second list as things to avoid at all costs, because they're going to distract you from the greatest things. They're things that you're interested in, but they're going to distract you. We've spoken about that concept before. David is, as always, is ahead of the curve from me and is actually putting this into practice. Well done. And so you've done that for this year. You've said, I've got my 25, well, I'm not sure if you got to 25, but top 20. You've ordered it and you've now got your top 5 for this year.
Yeah, so the whole concept really, by Warren Buffett, but by many other people that we would consider successful or high achievers, is really, it's about focus.
Yes.
That's what this is. It's a task to help you focus. And like you said, it was quite difficult actually to come up with 25 things that I really wanted to do this year, because I got to like 18 and I'm like, oh, maybe I kind of want to do this. And, like, can I reach 25? And I was like, that's not the point, is it? It's about, I mean, it is a bit the point, but not the whole point. Yeah. And I think you talked about how they actually talk about it in terms of life.
Yes.
But I was like, actually, it's this academic year really, isn't it? It's sort of September through to September, and I've taken on a new thing, and I realised if I'm not careful, if I try and do too much, I probably won't make it through this year in a very healthy way.
Yeah.
So for me, it suddenly became essential, maybe even urgent and important that I did this. I identified my top 5 so that I protected myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we also mentioned last week, I love the idea of doing, your 25 for your whole life. But before you're going to get maybe good at that, you might want to run it through a few iterations and kind of get good at how do I assess what are those top 25, and then how do I assess what are the true top 5. And so I think it's a great idea. You're still young. We're still in that space where it's like, hopefully, we've got the majority of our lives left to us in this world. So running it a few times on just that top 25 for a year seems like a much more manageable, much more realistic, and a helpful training exercise. Because then you can this time next year, you can look back and go, how did that go? Did I choose the top 5 right? Or would I have swapped one out? Mm-hmm. And if you run that through a few times, you'll be in your mid-30s and you might be in a space where you're willing to go, I'm now more able to go, I think I know what my top 5 are for life, or at least for the next foreseeable.
Mm-hmm. And again, these things are not rigid necessarily. Like you said, for life, that might change over time. But for this year, the big transition for me happened probably a couple of months ago now, where I applied and made the decision that I was going to train to become a maths teacher at secondary level. So that's children aged sort of 11 through to 16. I won't be doing 17 and 18-year-olds at this point. So that's suddenly a big thing. I'll be in schools 4 days a week. I'll be working with a training provider 1 day a week. And then on top of that, I'm doing a postgraduate certificate of education, which is a more sort of academic qualification for teaching.
Yep.
So there's a lot going on.
It all adds up pretty quickly.
Very much quickly, very, very quickly. Everyone talks about it being a very hectic year and very full on. And I realized that's a lot.
Yeah.
So those are 3 separate things for me.
And so those are in your top 5.
They're in my top 5. They're 3 separate things for me. I've coached enough people to know that some people would be greedy and they would say that's one thing. Right. But I said, actually, they're not one thing. They're 3 things.
Interesting.
I'm doing I'm working with a training provider who are going to train me to do teaching. I'm working in schools, and I'm going to start delivering starters and lessons, and as the year progresses, that's more. So that's actually just some of the nuts and bolts of teaching. And then I'm also doing a university qualification, which is another training thing.
Wow.
And that already takes up a lot of time. If I was greedy or idealistic and I said, oh, that's only one thing, then I'm going to put 4 other big things on my plate.
Sure.
And it's going to feel drowning.
Yes.
So for me, it was wisdom to go, they are 3 separate things.
It's I like that discernment, and I suppose it's come from also your work, as you said, as a coach. You've seen other people, and what happens when we try to put too much on a plate, ultimately something's going to fall off. So
yeah, so I remember being in some coaching conversations I've had with people, and we're sitting there, I'm at my computer, they're at their computer, and we're starting a new series. And the goal of a new series is often to set 2, maybe 3 big goals for that season, whether it's a 3-month season, a 4-month season. We're going to set 3 big goals that in 4 months' time, this is where we want to be. And I hear sometimes them going, well, they've come prepared. It's great. These are the 8 things I want to do. Great. And we're going to narrow that down. And we kind of narrow it down to 3. And then it's like, but we're going to add this one into this goal. So this is like a 2 goal. And it's like, I add this one in, but it's like, we don't have enough time and you don't have enough energy to focus on all of these things.
Yes.
So can you be disciplined to do that? And so, like you said, seeing maybe how I've sometimes coached other people through that challenge or that tension, knowing that the reality of this situation is as they are 3 separate things.
I suppose, again, this whole exercise is looking at those 25 things. Great. And they are obviously good desires. We're not talking about like choosing the good versus the bad. We're going choosing the great versus the good. And this whole exercise is going less is more. What you need to subtract, things add up, but you need to subtract away from that in order to make sure you're moving in one direction, you have traction, you're not being pulled in all these different directions, and ultimately something snaps or something breaks.
Yeah, because ultimately those 3 things alone, they take up a huge amount of time commitment. Yeah. I mean, I'm in schools from before 8 until probably 3-4ish in the afternoon. So that's already 8 hours of your day.
Yes.
And then on top of that, I'm doing the training for the training provider. On top of that, I'm doing the postgraduate certificate of education at the university. So already that's evenings and some weekend taken up.
Yes.
If just from that time commitment.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that's 3 of them.
So those are your top 3, and those are definitely related to vocation and what.
Not top 3, they're just in the 3.
First 3.
Yeah.
Those are your
these
first
are in
3.
no order, because depending on who listens to this.
Indeed. First 3 we've covered, not necessarily 1, 2, and 3. And those numbers may or may not be revealed later on.
Oh.
Keep watching for the Powerball. No, don't do the National Lottery.
The next 2.
Yeah, the next 2.
So my wife, Charlotte, she is a priority.
Yes.
One of the top 5.
We're not going to ask for which number that is.
No, yeah, thank you for not pushing me on that. It's just out there now. But yeah, like that, she is a priority. She will always be a priority. She has to be in that top 5. Again, what's the cost of not that? Well, that's going to damage my relationship with her, and that's really just not how I want to live my life.
Sure.
She's a priority. And the last one is sort of a Jesus community connection. I want to really create space and connection for that. So they're my 5.
And though I can absolutely see how with those 3, the work commitment's one, and then you're investing in your wife, that relationship is huge. And then community of any sort, we all know that that's difficult. And that's probably one of the reasons why we lack it, because it requires commitment, it requires effort. But the fact that it's made it into your top 5 is telling. Why is that in your top 5?
I think it's essential. Whilst the world shifts to, or maybe parts of the world shift to more independence and, separation, I think that community connection is vital for other people to encourage, and for me to encourage. And, ultimately, most people would agree that we are social. Yeah. We are social people. Yep. And so to create a space for that. And for me, that Jesus community connection is important. It's around that. It's not just chilling out.
It's not just, it's not just any community will do.
And I suppose as we come to like, these are my 5 things. One of the things I've already noticed is, one, it's given me so much clarity on what this year looks like.
Yeah.
But already it's given me permission to say no to things.
Yeah.
Like the other day,
I was going to ask.
you invited us to something in London, I think. Was it the theatre or something like that? Or you said, hey, mate, we're toying with going to this thing. It's a Sunday evening.
Yep.
And I was just like, no, that's
just not going to make it.
I'd like to do it. It sounds fun, but actually, with regards to those 5 things, it just gave me permission to go, actually, that's not a thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is where we want to land it for you guys listening, watching. This is a great experience that you've done. I'm going to run through it myself, always tagging up behind younger brother. But this is the invitation. Like, how long did it take you to maybe get that 25 down and narrow it down to that top 5?
I mean, I was thinking about it for a little while,
Yep.
maybe a week or so. Then I started writing things down, but I kind of knew a few of them might be.
Sure.
But I just wanted to be really like clear. Like, am I missing something? Is there something glaring that actually is going to come in?
So for someone that is going, I like this idea, I want to give this a shot. How in a couple of steps, or what can you expect would be a good way for us to go about doing this? How long do we want to spend? Do you say, like, get
2
that
weeks.
25 down?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Start thinking about it. Well, for me, it became evident I needed to do this because there was lots of like change.
Yep.
And I knew it was going to be a lot of work.
Yep.
And so there was a recognition that there needed to be focus.
Okay.
So I was thinking about it, then I wrote it down, or wrote some down, then I went away, and I was still, it's just sort of in the back of your head. Then I wrote some more down. Then I was just like, okay, star, and I toyed with the wording or how I was going to group it a little bit, but then that was that. And then now it's just in my head.
Yeah. Okay, so this is something that I'm going to do. I heard another coach say, one of the things that they often do when they have their coaching clients is, if they make a decision on, like, this is what we want to do, he said, you don't need to have done that by the time the next coaching session happens, but it needs to be in the calendar. So this is, again, so if this is going to be like a several week process, a couple of weeks, maybe you go away and you start thinking about it, but it'd be very easy for us to forget because we're in a busy world. So schedule like a 1 week check-in and schedule a 2 week, okay, this is when I'm going to actually choose that top 5. And if you've got that in mind, that will give a little bit of that deadline pressure, but also give you that space to mull over it. And then it will happen because you've scheduled it. So
definitely.
That's what I'm thinking.
So that's us making it count this week. We've really enjoyed this episode. Well, I have anyway, and you have an insight into what I'm focusing on this year.
Yeah.
And I hope that's been of some value to you. People say focus is essential. We're making it count, and you can't make it count if you're scattered, ultimately. And so focus is essential for who we stand for, really.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing what your guys' top 5s are.